Hello, can everybody hear me?
Namaste, everyone.
First of all, as we enter into the Zoom space today, I would like to recite a mantra as customary for all occasions. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now I'm going to add one more Shanti besides the 3-1. The 3 times that we normally say Shanti is to invoke peace in the mental space, in the space of body, as well as the space of emotion. I'm going to add Shanti for the Zoom space as we now enter into this new space medium. First of all, I'd like to invoke venerations to everybody. Sarvebhyo namo namaha. Hindu yuvebhyo namo namaha. If there are elders like me, for them venerations. This is the type of approach that ancients in our ancestors normally would start a meeting. There are many reasons why they did so, what they did. Today, the topic that we will be discussing, I'd like to share what I little know about it, and I will give you the reason why I want to talk about it. And secondly, I would like to raise issues related to this big topic that Ramana raised in his own experiments with his existence. It turns out I'm not a philosopher. I don't claim any authorship. I have absolutely no qualifications that others can claim. But I have some advantages, which I'm going to share. It turns out I'm going to introduce myself a little more. And I'm going to ask you, as I'm talking about myself, when I say myself, I'm talking about my background, my past, my ego, my vita, curricular vita, biographical sketch. That's all I'm going to be talking about as an introduction. And this is a very important starting point. So the first question all of us should ask, do we have an ID that we identify with? I'm choosing the words very, very carefully. Do you have an ID that you identify with? Give you 2 seconds to think about it. Chances are every one of us does it automatically. So if by any chance somebody asked me, who are you? Suppose you would say, I'm introducing Mysore Dayananda, who happens to be a retired Professor Emeritus at Purdue University. He teaches the area of diffusion in solids, and that's his area of expertise. So my biographical sketch simply expresses my life's exposure to the outside world, what I have learned through study, what I have listened to others, what I have imbibed from other speakers, what I have studied intensely from books, what I claim authorship, and even what I claim to have done sadhana. We talk about some of these things in detail if somebody wants to know more about it. But my background, putting it a different way, is highly conditioned, just like yours. I challenge there is none in the audience who has claims to say I have no conditioned background. You're all conditioned. Okay, let me tell you my condition background. I happened to be born in Mysore city. My name is Dayananda. So I say I am Mysore Dayananda from originally Karnataka, and my father happens to be Anantamurti. My mother happens to be Kapilama. My father was a magistrate or a judge, extremely knowledgeable, and he was extremely knowledgeable in many areas, including Vedas, including Upanishads. And then one of the advantages that many of you may or may not have is that my parents taught me and my brothers, we are six brothers, and he taught all of us when we were young to look into our own mind and inquire. The reason he got exposed to Ramana in 1937, where he went to Ramanashrama, where he essentially stayed for about 10 days in the year 1937, during March and April of 1937, and got so impressed by Ramana with opportunities to talk to him, learn from him at his feet, and came back. And the first thing he told all of us youngsters, if you behave properly, if you renounce the quality of anger or greed, any one of these so-called Arishadvargas, any one of them, I will send you to Ramanashrama. That was the type of attraction and then reward he would put before us. And that's one of the advantages that I can claim in my background. The second advantage I can claim, we were exposed to many, many, many Mahatmas. A Himalayan Mahatma by the name of Tapasviji, who was 185 years old. He knew this secret of Kaya Kalpa, rejuvenated himself many times. He was our family guru. With his grace, we had tremendous amount of opportunity to learn from him. The various concepts that I'm going to be sharing with you are partly due to his grace. Now, with this particular claim to this background, my ego says, stop it. Don't claim anymore. What advantages have you derived? Show the proof of. And we will explore that just the way you may probably explore your own background and claim exposure to the art of inquiry, self-inquiry, which is the topic of today. Now, I'm going to be discussing Ramana's life very briefly and his method of inquiry very carefully, choosing very careful words. I try not to quote if possible. I don't want to invoke any more mantras, although I do have memory of several Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita included, but I won't quote. That's the last thing Ramana wants you to do. Don't hide behind quotations, please, was the dictum that I learned. But think about it. So we will do that thinking together today. So I humbly ask you, please look at your own bio data, curricular vita. I ask you now some simple questions to introduce the topic of self-inquiry. The self-inquiry, as it says, is a term of inquiring into the way how the mind works, how the mind arises from its source, and how it dissolves. So, emanation, sustenance, and dissolution of all that is manifested through the ego process. It utilizes various senses available to the body, various sensations, feelings, everything that our mind records through the instrument of the brain. So, anything we acquire as a part of our background, including relative knowledge, scientific knowledge, theses, writing books, discussions like the one we are in today, they are all repetitions of thoughts that we already have been exposed to. Absolutely nothing new. I'm just repeating what I have heard, what I learned, what I remember. So now, I'm going to go back to Ramana Maharshi's background. Ramana was born on December 30th, 1879 in Tiruchuzzi in the state of Tamil Nadu, originally called Madras. His father was Sundaram Iyer, his mother Alagammal. He was the second of 4 children. His given name, Venkata Ramana Iyer. The boy was brilliant, but very quiet. He went through his middle school, but unfortunately, his father, Sundaram Iyer, died in 1892. Ramana was only 13 years old when he lost his father. So what happened, his uncle by the name of Subba Iyer happened to be living in Madurai. So Ramana's mother sent Ramana and his elder brother Nagaswami, the 2 boys, to be educated in Madurai. And Subba Iyer took these 2 boys in his house. And Ramana went through the middle school, finished up, then continued on to high school. Now, he's were a great bhakta of Shiva. He used to go to Shiva temples and would sit in the temple premises quietly and get absorbed in Shiva's presence in the temple. At that time, he was still a little teenager, 16, hardly 16. One day, happens to be in 1896, July. He was sitting in the upstairs room of Uncle's house, in his bedroom, and an unusual thing happened to him. Suddenly he felt that his pranic forces are draining off. He felt he may die. So what really happened was, Ramana decided to explore death. He was bold enough, extremely courageous enough to recognize that he should explore what death is. So he said, okay, I'm going to lie down on my bed, put my limbs stiff, I won't hold my breath, let me accommodate the death process, but I'm going to watch it as a witness. We asked the question, who is it that is dying? It's the body? Is it the mind? What is it? So, as he explored within himself this inquiry, he recognized it's only the body that's dying. He intuited in 30 minutes of this experimentation of inquiry, who am I? Inquiry. He recognized the I ego that was asking this question vanished into oblivion, dissipated, sublimated from his background. He suddenly recognized there is another illuminating light, as it were, that dawned in his consciousness. He recognized it is nothing but awareness itself. So this particular realization was nothing new to him. He said, hey, I thought I didn't know this, but I already knew. So there is nothing new in this realization except I confirmed what I am, what I was, what I will be. I'm eternally available entity called pure self, pure self-awareness. And in 30 minutes, he was awake in the real sense of Advaitic philosophy. So such was the experimentation. Today, we will try to follow a few of those guidelines. I take the liberty of asking a few questions to ourselves. As I ask myself, you can ask yourself. And one of the rule of thumb is that we all think that we are very, very scientific. We put ourselves on a pedestal as scientists. So was the greatest scientist Ramana in the 19th and 20th century. We are going to do that experimentation, if you will. Not as good as he did, but we try. That's the sadhana. Now, let me give you one additional piece of information. As I indicated to you in my earlier segment of my talk, I'm going to call that phase 1. In the phase 2 portion, I told you some background about Ramana. And I will give you additional details of his biography as I find useful later on in the discussion of Ramana's philosophy. So now I'm going to go into the third phase of my discussion. The third phase is crucial, extremely important. Pay attention to each and every idea. And these are not my ideas. These are not your ideas. These are the ideas of the ancient sages, of the Upanishads and beyond. Eternal concepts. Ramana rediscovered it, restated it in his own beautiful forms of expression. And I'm going to try to repeat some of it. Now, I'm not going to quote him, but in our own modern context as scientists, so-called scientists. Okay, the ground rules are this. Any commentary, any claims to analysis, if it is scientific, and if I come up with a proof that it is so, those concepts are valid, you should be able to do exactly the same, provided you follow the same procedure, experimental conditions. That's the requirement. Nothing special about Ramana, nothing special about any other Mahatma. They did it before you did it. Now, we so-called scientists and scholars, first of all, Ramana says, you are raising the issue of self-inquiry, inquiring to your own nature, eternal nature. And I use the word eternal, that's his word, Ramana's word. And all Advaitic philosophers, Shankaracharya's word. Eternal. It should be eternally evident to everybody, self-evident. That's the test. What a tremendous scientific approach. Furthermore, if you think you are scientific, the ancient rishis and the modern rishi, namely Ramana, added just like the ancient rishis of the Upanishads. The test goes even beyond. The question is being discussed in the waking state as we are awake, hopefully. You and I are listening. We are supposedly in the awake condition, waking state. But all these questions and discussions will vanish from our discussion frame. It gets out of the Zoom space as we sleep tonight. This so-called inquiry has no relevance in this dreaming state. You don't even raise this issue. You imagine other issues through memory banks. You tap into your hard disk of memory and create new visions, new bodies, new spaces, explore other realms. Then you fall into the deep sleep state. Everybody knows what a deep sleep state. After you wake up, but at the time of sleep, deep sleep, no dreams, no sankalpas, says the Mandukya Upanishad. But the deep sleep state is the one that gives rise to the waking state, gives rise to the dream state. So the three states of existence that all of us happen to go through every 24 hours, all these three states are equally valid to the jnani. Furthermore, he recognized what is common to these three states. If I ask any one of you, you ask yourself, what is common to your existence, to you? You call yourself so-and-so. What is it that you experience as a common factor? The word is experience. Think, pause. What is common to you as you are in the waking condition right now? When you go into the dream state, and then you fall in deep sleep. Ramana raised this issue. As a matter of fact, that was the main analysis of the Mandukya Upanishads 12 stanzas. All great teachers are masters of that Upanishad. But the beautiful question is, what is common to these three states? Ramana said, just like Shankara, just like any great Advaitic philosopher, pointed out the state of deep sleep gives rise to the waking state, but still persists in the background. I'm going to repeat again. Waking state is not a new state. It's simply the deep sleep state with the emanation of your ego. So mathematically, if you want to add in a simplistic terminology, deep sleep state plus the ego I of the waking condition manifests itself as the beautiful waking state that we are discussing right now. I'm using my ego as an instrument. You are using your ego as listening instruments. That's all the difference. You're in deep sleep right now. I'm in deep sleep right now. But the question comes up very quickly as a scientist. Hey, I don't feel it. I don't know. How do you know that? Now, Ramana points out again, you're so right to ask that question, but ask who is it that is asking the question? Is it the personality or the existence that existed in the deep sleep? Or the ego that showed up in the waking condition that's raising this issue. All this issue and discussion is only to the darn waking egos, yours and mine. We are discussing that problems with the egos, one ego to the other ego. So Ramana pointed out very beautifully, all you have to do is simply recognize this truth. It's called cognition, that the ego arises from the deep sleep state, which is original to you. You were born in that deep sleep state from your womb. Somebody kicked your back, so you got the ego consciousness arising in you. But you know how to get rid of it by going to deep sleep. All problems vanish, all questions vanish. But then you can immediately say, hey, there is something wrong in your argument. Ramana points that out. Why don't you try this experiment? The experiment is, try to realize that you are in deep sleep as you are in the waking condition consciously. The consciousness is a very crucial defining terminology that Ramana points out is the basis from which all avasthas, the three states, Jagrat, Swapnavastha, and Sushupti, arise and change from one state to the other during 24 hours every day. If you can retain awareness that you happen to be in pure deep sleep, then suddenly you will ask the question, I was not aware in deep sleep that I was aware. The reason is, Ramana points out, the awareness is the background from which your ego showed up. Ego wants to be aware. Ego is the one that is claiming, like a joker, taking the bow and say, hey, I'm the one who should get the credit. So now, to summarize these concepts, three states of being of everybody persists on the framework of awareness as the pure background or a pure substratum or the pure existence. And you're so happy in that pure existence in deep sleep, you recognize only after you wake up, I slept very peacefully. I'm so happy. All my problems were not there. You recall after waking up. So your memory is simply telling that. But in the deep sleep itself, you were not aware. So, a jnani, like Ramana, he says, I'm going to simulate consciously, being aware, the deep sleep state in the waking state. I'm going to repeat that. Can you be in the Sushupti state, in the Jagrata Avastha, in the waking state? Ramana says it's easy. Just get rid of the ego. That's all there is. There's nothing to gain. Just to get rid of it. That's all the sadhana you need to do. Inquire. Inquire into what? Inquire into the ego arising and dissolving. So you say, okay, I will do that. As I get up in the morning, I will be watching that ego rising up. If you could do it, As you pass from the deep sleep or even the dream state, as you awake in the morning, you would, if you can catch it with the ego, but you're trying to catch the ego itself. Ego says, sorry, you can't use me to catch myself as the ego. So that is not acceptable. So the only route, Ramana says, ask those questions that help you to cajole the ego to subside. That's based upon your inclination. You can say, I'm going to ask myself, how do I do this? You can focus your attention of the mind to dwell on the ego feeling. Ramana points out the ego feeling is the first feeling. I. As you get up, suddenly the feeling I exists. That's the ego. Catch on to it. Hold on to it. Stay with it. That ego feeling, the so-called the I ego, waking ego, suddenly loses its power and vanishes, according to Ramana. Instead, as you reduce your thoughts, you are focusing the thought now onto the ego itself, the feeling of ego, aham. Remember, when I say aham, that's the ego aham. When I cease to say ego aham, the real aham spontaneously manifests. You don't do anything. It spontaneously manifests. All your efforts is to focus on your ego, and in that effort, when it becomes habitual, becomes effortless, ego vanishes from the scene. That is the greatest message of Ramana. Now, I'm going to move on in the next 5 minutes to the way in which Ramana shared his insights. See, Ramana, after he had this experience in Madurai in the year 1896, this realization that he is the immortal spirit, immortal essence of being. The word spirit, being, God, inspiration, whatever the name you want to bring in, Ramana pointed out it all means the same. You can call him Ishvara, you can call him whatever you want. But it's the mind, namely ego, wants to give a name, just like our ID. I go back to the concept of ID now. So now I'm going to try to raise 3 or 4 questions. The first question I'm going to propose in front of you is, please check your ID in your own mind. I know you have an ID card. I'm not talking the driver's license. Your entire background, entire lifestyle learning, all your pandityas, all your experiences, good, bad, doesn't matter. The question of good and bad doesn't even arise in Ramana's mind. All are facets of the mind. So now, check it. Go through it if you like to. Now I'm going to ask the question, who are you? I give you a few seconds to answer in your own mind. You don't need to answer on this dialogue. Some people might say, I'm so-and-so. I'm Shivaram Gopal. I'm Janardhan, I'm Mukundan, Sri Tapasvi, Vijendra, Vishan, Amit. Doesn't matter what name I'm reading these names, as you can see it. Great. Thank you for your participation. Now I'm going to change the question a little bit. Since you have your Vita with you, can you please set it aside? Putting it in a different way, throw away your Vita. Get rid of it. Erase your memory banks. You're nobody. Even that concept, nobody should throw it away. Now ask the question, who are you? You ask yourself, who am I? Without your Vita, which you collected. I'm giving you 5 seconds to ask that question. Who are you without your Vita? Chances are your mind went blank. Your mind, namely the ego manifestation, looked for an answer in all the bibliography, in all the details of your past experiences. It looked. You can't use that Veda for an answer. It got stumped. So it became silent for a fraction of a second. Note, mind is a very powerful energy manifestation. Medical folks tell us mind thinks 50,000 thoughts per day on the average. The brain produces 25 watts of energy. It's a powerful instrument. It produces delta waves, theta waves, alpha waves, beta, gamma, all kinds of waves. When I ask the question, who are you without your Veda? Your mind becomes quiet. That's what Ramana talked about, stillness of the mind. In that stillness, which you can enjoy, even for a fraction of a second, you recognize your being is very peaceful, very conscious, and nothing but bliss. Sat, Chit, Ananda. These are the 3 aspects of your being that's talked about in Vedic literature and Upanishadic thoughts. So now, I'm going to end up with a few more questions for you to ponder. Ramana, who gave us this inquiry approach into your own self, into your own being, without your Vita, to come as an obstacle to your existence. Any problem you have is simply a resistance due to your Vita, due to your background, conditioned background. You don't know how to let go in a situation. The mind dives into its Vita details, holds on to gory memories, and tries to live it again and again and again. Either joy or grief, doesn't matter. That's its nature, repetition. And Ramana says, that's the problem. In the waking state, be conscious of it. Let go of your background. at least for a minute. Minute is a long time. For a few seconds, yes. But if you persist, Ramana points out, as he showed later on in the Ramana Ashram, existence where he lived until 1950. He was met with many, many, many scholars, many, many Mahatmas, great Mahatmas, many, many Siddha Purushas, scholars particularly. And I'm going to give just one story, because I got many. And one of the stories happens to be related to my own father. My father went to Ramanashram in 1937, as I said. He stayed there for about 10 days with my mother, partially. Mother stayed only 3 days. And my father was a judge. He wanted evidence for everything. Then he got so exposed to the self-inquiry thought process, he shared some of those ideas with us. And there is a beautiful collection of dialogues between Ramana and the questioners over many, many years, compiled by the Ramanashrama folks. And these are compiled originally into 3 volumes, but today it is all compiled into 700 pages, Talks with Ramana. And that's the book my father gave me when I was in high school to read during summer. I don't claim to have understood at that time. I thought he was trying to punish me. My brothers read that too. We are 6 brothers. He gave us unusual names. First, my eldest brother is Rajkumar. Second one is Sachidananda. He became sannyasi, as the name demands. Third one, Gautama. He had almost like a Buddha-like smile, behaved like one. Next one is Vishwamitra. He was indeed a Vishwamitra type personality, could accomplish anything. He was a top-notch crystallographer, scientist in Oxford and the Indian Institute of Science. He was the 4th one. Me, the 5th one, mundane professor at Purdue University. The 6th one is in Cincinnati. He studied in Indian Institute of Science as well as Georgia Tech. His name is Janardhan, aeronautical engineer, expert in sound, specifically reduction of sound of jet engines. So we have different types of backgrounds. But one thing in common, you all were the beneficiaries of what my father taught us and my mother taught the most important truth. The truth is, never ever forget the divinity in you and respect everyone as a divine manifestation. That comes to us very, very handy most of the time. So I'm going to stop and end with this invocation again. Sarvebhyo namo namaha. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for this wonderful talk. So now I'll ask some questions that are coming from our viewers here. So the first question is, what is a good set of practices for daily sadhana?
Very good. I'm essentially going to depend upon what Ramana said. Since it is focused on Ramana's message, Ramana was not a scholar. He had no idea of Upanishads. As a 16-year-old boy, he realized his truth, the eternal truth of his being. And the only sadhana he did on that most important day in July 1896, where he, for 30 minutes, he did this inquiry into his own thought process and asked the question, who is dying? What is death? Within 30 minutes, he was able to explore what was eternally true as his essence. Now, he repeated this information over and over again, but it turns out there was one great expert in Shastras called the Ganapati Shastri. He was a great scholar, fantastic scholar. He was only 1 year older to Ramana. And when Ramana was 20 years old and living in the Arunachala hills near to Ramanashram, what is Ramanashram today, in Tiruvannamalai, there is a cave called Virupaksha Cave. And Ramana lived there for several years. And it's only after 1922, 23, he essentially came down that from hill, Arunash hill. Aruna means red. Hill, of course, is the Arunachala, is the name of the hill. Now, the point I want to indicate is this. As scholars went to Ramanashram, one of the early visitors is Ganapati Shastri. He had his own disciples. He used to teach what Vedanta is to others. But somebody told him, there is one young Mahatma in a cave. Please go and see him and see if he's a Mahatma. So, this great scholar, extremely erudite, he can quote anything. Great scholar of Sanskrit. He could compose poems, poetry, which he has done. He went to the cave, one look at Ramana, fell down. He had a huge Sastanga Namaskar in front of this young boy. So the scholarly Ganapati Shastri recognized the greatness of, call it if you will, the reality expression of Ramana through his looks, just one look. Then he became a fairly good disciple of Ramana, listened to him all the time, and then he composed his own collection of information. And most importantly, in addition to his writings, Ramana himself composed 30 verses of Upadesha. I'm mentioning this in response to the question, Upadesha Saram. There are 30 verses that answers any questions you ask. So I have to depend on those 30 verses. Lucky for me, my father wrote a book on Ramana. And it's an extraordinary biography of Ramana with great discussion of Ramana's philosophy. And I'm going to show it to you just in case you don't believe me. This is the book I'm holding, my father's writing. This is published not only in India, but also in this country. But all copies are sold out, except a few I have with me. I would be happy to share with folks who are really interested, a copy or two. So that's the book in that I'm going to be referring to now. What is the daily sadhana that you recommend based on Ramana is the question. Ramana points out, maybe I'm going to read the exact translation so that people will not have a chance to mistake my rendering. Ramana says, I'm quoting, mind is merely a bundle of thoughts. Of all such thoughts, the root thought is I or me, the ham vritti. Vritti is simply perturbation, a wave in the field of mind. So I or me is nothing but the mind. It's I or me alone is the mind. Now, as a sadhana, he points out, from where does this mind arise? One must raise this question within one's own mind and discover the answer within oneself. If such an investigation is done, the I thought vanishes. The method of investigation, the self-inquiry, are jnana marga. That's the only recommendation he puts, only sadhana he suggests. Now, some of you may think he did not talk about other modes of approaching the truth. He did. But I will not talk about it unless somebody raises that issue. Thanks for the question.
So, thanks for the answer, Professor. It was very enlightening in a way. But the next question is that so this is the daily practice we have to do, as you said, the self-inquiry. But how does this help in our day-to-day life? Also, is the next question. So we are talking about enlightenment and things like that, but in day-to-day life, people are seeking not for enlightenment, right? So they are seeking for something which is very basic. So this kind of inquiry, how does that help? And probably this might be one of your experiences probably in your life, that this definitely helps in our day-to-day life also. So can you please elaborate on that?
Sure. This is a very, very, very valid, common question, because we think the question of inquiring into one's own mode of thought, self-inquiry, is a very specific sadhana. And it's only those people who want to go on the road of Jnana Marga are the ones who are entitled to it, are qualified for it. Now, Ramana points out, take any one of you, anyone, based on our conditioned background, we have some preconceived ideas how to live. My parents taught me some way, your parents taught you some other way. We recite poems, we recite mantras, some people won't care less. Some people are Advaitis, Dvaitis, Vishishtadvaitis. Some people say, hey, I won't care less. God as a concept has no use for me. Now, Ramana points out, fantastic. Don't worry about, they're all baggage. How are holy, mighty, profound. or not profound. He says, fantastic recognition. One who thinks he's a great Mahatma is as much of a fool as a guy who thinks he's a fool. Just because you put yourself in a pedestal, just like Trump does, unfortunately, doesn't mean a damn thing. Reality, you know. No title, no claims have any bearing to your real reality. So, in real life, the only so-called dharma, now the fact that Hindu YUVA group is very profoundly interested in dharma concept. I'm going to share with you what dharma is. There could be many, many definitions in scriptures. The simplest way of understanding one's behavior in life or one's conduct in life. Remember, you go through 3 stages during your 24 hours of daily living. You wake up, mostly 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, some students 14 hours. Then you fall asleep. You may have nice dreams, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, alternated by deep sleep, which is fairly small amount, maybe an hour or 2 per night. Now, recognize the most important for activity happens in the waking state through 3 medias of expression. One is through thought process. First, you think of an idea, thought. That comes in the field of mind, as Ramana pointed out, as the first ego idea, I. Now, nothing wrong with that ego idea. It is a manifestation of the original self from which it showed up. It is expressing itself in great fashion, beauty. Don't knock it. Ramana pointed out, hey, don't knock that ego. Just make it subside, just the way nature does during deep sleep. Then he recognizes you are also expressing your life forces, not only through words, through thoughts, but you are expressing in words. Then comes the medium of activity, action. Remember, our great rishis pointed out, all of us are busy. In most of our waking hours, thought, word, and deed mediums. There's nothing special about your thought, nothing special about your expression, nothing special about your activity. They are all equivalent activity in the real sense of the term, different expressions. But what is dharma then? I'm going to pause for 2, 3, 4 seconds because each one of you experts have to have your own ideas. The greatest seers of our time, such as Ramana, Aurobindo, Yogananda, Vivekananda, all these great masters said the same damn thing. Nobody has expressed anything new. Absolutely new. Nothing new. Just repeat. I challenge anyone, just like Ramana did. Can anyone come up with a new thought that hasn't been expressed earlier? Scientist says, I did. Little does he know. Some of those damn ideas have been expressed already in different ways. Anything in a relative framework has been explored in great depth in different terminologies. But we are rediscovering to the current age. So be it. But now I'm end up defining what dharma is. The great masters, not just Ramana only. I'm going to quote Shirdi Baba, Satya Sai Baba, Aurobindo. Doesn't matter. Quote anybody. I don't need to quote. I purposely don't want to quote. Quoting is easy, very easy. Don't hide in quotations. So, dharma is, without any scriptures, based on your own experience, everybody's experience. Most scientific answer is, since we are expressing ourselves constantly through thought processes and express it in words, translate words into activity, actions, anything we do, in any field. We ask the question, I want success in this effort. You do this to aggrandize yourself. I succeeded in what I set out to do. Any project. No, here, there is no question of right or wrong. You want to succeed. You want to be happy succeeding it. Fulfillment, you say. The great Rishi says, you ask the question, what is dharma? Dharma is coordination between three phases of activity of expression: thought, word, and deed. Need to coordinate. We know that. Speak what you think. Act what you say. This is the essence of dharma. But in the process, don't hurt any other person. Make sure you do your activity without hurting anybody else or hurting another person's thought process of what he thinks. You can share, but don't force. No coercion. If you want to show by your own activity of coordinating thought, word, and deed, that's the essence of Sanatana Dharma. There is no better definition than that. Thanks for the question.
With that, I thank Professor Dayananda once again, and I thank everybody who has joined this call as well as joined us live on YouTube. Now, I'll ask everybody to continue to stay safe, and I'll officially end this session for the people who are watching on YouTube, and we can continue to interact